Welcome everyone. We are Group 5 from the Bachelor of Science in Information Technology 1 of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Lopez Branch. As per our requirement in GEE D020, Politics, Governance, and Citizenship subject, today, I am excited to introduce to you to a crucial aspect of the Philippine government, the system of check and balances. In the next few minutes, we will dive into the significance of check and balance, its role in upholding democracy, and its implementation in the Philippine context. Una, ano nga ba ang check and balances? The goal is to strike a balance of power, preventing any one branch from becoming too dominant and maintaining accountability and transparency. It fosters cooperation and compromise among branches and ensures decisions are carefully reviewed and balanced. While challenges exist, it remains a cornerstone of democratic governance, promoting responsible decision-making in the best interest of the people. Check and balances is a system of governance that ensures power is distributed among different branches of government to prevent the abuse of authority. So, ang check and balances is isa siyang sistema na pumoprotekta upang hindi maabuso ng mga nakaupo sa pwesto ang kanilang otoridad o yung kapangyarihan. Why check and balances matter? Collective decision-making, adaptive governance, transparency and accountability, protection of individual liberties. So ayun, kung nakakapag-usap-usap ang mga legislators natin sa bawat batas, sa bawat desisyon, kung napapag-usapan ng lahat ng sangay ng gobyerno ang bawat mga batas nila, kung naging adaptive sila sa mga nagiging problema ng bansa, mas magiging mabuti ang kalalabasan ng mga desisyon nila kung mapapag-isipan ito ng mabuti. Sabi nga, di ba, two heads is better than one. The concept of checks and balances is essential for upholding democratic principle in any nation. It prevents the concentration of power in the hands of a few and ensures that decisions are made collectively for a greater good. The three branches of the Philippine government. The dominance of any branch of the Philippine government is a threat to both principle of separations of power and independence of each body, which may lead to a constitutional crisis. Executive branch, led by the President, responsible for executing and enforcing laws and policies. The President is elected by the people and serves as a single 6-year term. This branch wields significant power but is subject to check from the other branches. B. The legislative branch consists of bicameral Congress with the Senate and the House of Representatives. Its primary role is gumawa or magbago ng batas, allocate funds, and represent the interests of the Filipino people. Congress can check the executive by overriding vetoes and conducting investigations. C. The judicial branch. The judicial branch is an independent branch responsible for interpreting laws and resolving legal disputes. The Supreme Court is the highest judicial authority, ensuring that laws and actions align with the Constitution. It can declare executive and legislative actions unconstitutional, thus balancing power. Here are some examples of check and balances in action. I will try to avoid providing in-depth explanation at this point as we plan to cover these details in the latter part of our discussion. The impeachment process is a check on the executive, as Congress can hold accountable high-ranking officials, including the President and justices. The Supreme Court's power of judicial review has ensured the constitutionality of laws and policies, preventing potential abuses of authority. The budgetary power of Congress allows it to allocate funds and exercise oversight over government spending. The executive branch, specifically the President, has the authority to appoint individuals to various government positions, including the judiciary. However, the appointments are subject to confirmation by the Commission on Appointment. The President can veto bills passed by Congress. However, Congress can override the veto with a 2/3 majority vote in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. This override power gives Congress the ability to challenge the President's decision and ensure that no single branch can unilaterally halt legislation supported by a significant majority. Despite its significance, there are challenges to the system. Here are some: political dynamics, dynasties, partisan interests, and corruption can impact the effectiveness of the system. Striking a balance between the branches can be complex, especially during times of national crisis or emergencies. Ayun, sinasabi na nga dito na, ayun nga, possibly, kunwari, magka-partido si ganito, yung dalawang nakaupo sa magkaibang branch ng government. E di, may kakayahan sila ngayon na magkaroon ng lamang. Kumbaga, kung mas marami sila sa isang, kunwari, sa House of Representatives, 66 yung, kunwari, from Liberal Party, kung 300 something yung upuan sa House, di, ang laki na agad nung lamang nila. Kasi, usually, ang politics, gumagana, ang dirty politics, is gumagana lang siya, or gumagana dito sa Pilipinas, like, kung ano yung gusto or napag-usapan ng partido nyo, yun kailangan yung gagawin nyo in order na suportahan pa rin kayo ng partido nyo. Ayan, kaya ngayon may ipapakita ko sa inyong data na inihanda ko. Here's the result for the May 2022 election for the House of Representatives. Sa PDP laban, they won 66 seats or 66 na tao nila yung nanalo. Sa Nationalista Party naman is 36. National Unity Party naman is 33. NPC naman is 35. Lakas has 26. Liberal has 10. And 6 independent yung nanalo. Big sabihin, dyan pa lang sa metrics na yan, kayo na yung makakapagsabi sino ba yung magkakaroon ng influence pagdating na sa mga readings or sa mga decision na kung agree sila sa mga house bills na pinapasa nila. Ito naman yung sa Philippine Senate, May 2022 elections din to. NPC has 4, Independents has 4, PDP laban 1 seat, also as nationalist, Akbayan, and there are 6 independent seats. Yung isa naman, Force of the Philippines, I think. Nakalimutan ko na. 1 lang din ang napanalo na nila. Ngayon, tayo na yung makakapagsabi dito sa metrics na to kung magkakaroon nga ba ng influensya yung partido nila. Ngayong may idea na tayo tungkol sa checks and balances, let's dive in!
Hi everyone, my name is Jules M Poblete. Ngayon ay pag-uusapan natin ang isa sa pinakamahalagang konsepto sa ilalim ng saligang batas, ang separation of power. Ano nga ba ang separation of power? Separation meaning magkahiwalay, power meaning kapangyarihan. In simple term, ang separation of power ay nangangahulugan ng that there is a division of government power and responsibilities into 3 distinct branches to ensure that the power doesn't concentrate into one branch alone. Ibig sabihin, pinaghihiwa-hiwalay at pinamamahagi ito sa magkakaibang institusyon para masiguro na walang sangay ng gobyerno ang mas makapangyarihan over the other. Ang Pilipinas ay isang Republican state with a presidential form of government where power is divided into 3 branches. Ito ay ang executive, legislative, and judiciary department. Sa executive department, meron tayong pangulo, vice-presidente, at mga cabinet members. Sa legislative department, meron tayong kongreso, ang lower house o ang House of Representatives, at ang upper house, ang Senado. Ang judiciary naman ay pinangungunahan ng Korte Suprema with Chief Justice and other courts. By jurisprudence, sinasabi po ng ating Korte Suprema that each department of the government has exclusive cognizance of matters within its jurisdiction and it's supreme within its own sphere. Makapangyarihan po sila sa kani-kanilang mga departamento. Ang Legislative Department o ang Kongreso ay inatasan na gumawa ng mga batas sa ilalim ng ating konstitusyon. Inatasan ng Executive Department na ipatupad ang mga batas na ginawa ng lehislatura. Trabaho naman ng Judicial Department na magbigay ng interpretasyon ng batas. Ang General Rule ay dapat walang pakailanmanan ng trabaho ng Kongreso ay di dapat pakailaman ng Executive Department. Hindi din pwedeng pakailaman ng Judiciary Department sa trabaho ng Executive Department at Legislative Department. Walang pakailanmanan at dapat pantay-pantay lamang, pero para masiguro na walang lamangan sa tatlong sangay ng gobyerno at pantay-pantay lamang ang kanilang kapangyarihan, may isang sistemang nailagay sa ating konstitusyon. Ito ay ang tinatawag na System of Check and Balance. Check and balance, to check meaning tingnan, para masiguro na balanse pa rin ang kapangyarihan. Pinakamagandang halimbawa nito ay ang Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020. Napakalawak ng kapangyarihan ng Kongreso at kahit ano ay maaari itong gumawa ng batas katulad na lamang ng Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020. Pero ang Executive Department through the President could check the power of Congress by exercising his veto power. Maaaring hindi niya permahan o aprubahan ang panukalang batas at ibalik ito sa Kongreso, stating his objection on that particular bill. Pero kahit naging batas ang Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, ay nakikita pa rin natin na operational ang system ng check and balance. This time, ang Judiciary Department o ang Korte Suprema should be the one to check the powers of the Executive and the Legislative Department by exercising its judicial power and vested upon under the Constitution. Titingnan ngayon ng ating Korte Suprema kung naayon nga ba sa Konstitusyon ang nasabing batas. Dapat po nating tandaan na kahit separate ang power ng three branches of government, hindi ito nangangahulugan na the nation should be strictly separated. Ayon sa principle of blending of power, may coordination at nagtutulungan ng tatlong sangay ng ating gobyerno in the exercise of particular power, function, or responsibility para sa epektibong pagpapatakbo ng ating pamahalaan.
Hello everyone, I'm Jocell Rosales from BSIT1, and today I'm going to discuss the historical development of separation of powers in the Philippines. The concept of separation of powers, which aims to distribute governmental authority among different branches, was fundamental to the development of the Philippine government. The historical development of the separation of powers in the Philippines can be traced back to various stages. First is the Spanish colonial era. During Spanish rule from the 16th to the 19th century, the Philippines was governed by a centralized system with power vested in the Spanish crown and its appointed representatives. There was little separation of powers, and the authority rested mostly in the hands of the Governor-General, who had both executive and judicial powers. Second is the Philippine Revolution. In the late 19th century, Filipinos began to fight for independence from Spanish colonial rule. In 1898, the Malolos Constitution was drafted by the First Philippine Republic, establishing a more defined separation of powers. The document provided for three separate branches of government: the executive, legislative, and judiciary. Emilio Aguinaldo was the president. The Malolos Congress served as the legislative body, and a Supreme Court was also established. Third is the American colonial period. After the Spanish-American War, the Philippines fell under American colonial rule. The United States established a civilian government and introduced the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, which created a bicameral legislature and enhanced the separation of powers. The Governor-General remained the executive authority, while the Philippine Commission and later the Philippine Assembly became the legislative branch. Next is the Commonwealth era. In 1935, the Philippines transitioned into a self-governing commonwealth under the Tidings-McDuffie Act. The 1935 Constitution continued the separation of powers, with the President as the head of the executive branch, the bicameral National Assembly as the legislative branch, and the Supreme Court as the judiciary. Next is the martial law period. In 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and extended his executive authority. The judiciary was weakened during this period as some judges were replaced, and the Supreme Court's independence was compromised. Next is the post-martial law. After the People Power Revolution in 1986, the Philippines adopted a new constitution in 1987. The 1987 constitution reestablished and strengthened the separation of powers with three co-equal branches of government: the executive, legislative, and judiciary. It also introduced additional checks and balances, such as the creation of the Commission on Human Rights. Here are some examples of separation of powers in action in the Philippines under the 1987 Constitution. Impeachment process. The Philippine Congress has the power to impeach the President and other high-ranking officials for culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft, and corruption, other high crimes, or betrayal of public trust. The impeachment process involves the House of Representatives initiating impeachment proceedings and the Senate acting as the impeachment court to try and decide on the case. Next is the presidential veto. The President has the power to veto bills passed by Congress. However, Congress can override the President's veto by 2/3 vote of both houses. Next is the judicial review. The Philippine judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, has the power of judicial review. This allows them to review the constitutionality of laws and executive actions. If a law is found to be unconstitutional, it is deemed void and unenforceable. Next is checks on emergency powers. While the President has the authority to declare a state of emergency, there are limitations to this power to prevent abuse. The declaration must be based on specified grounds, and its validity can be challenged before the Supreme Court. And as you can see, everyone, these examples illustrate how the principles of separation of powers are woven into the fabric of the Philippine government, providing checks and balances to ensure a functioning and accountable democracy.
The concept of separations of powers in the government is the idea of separating powers within a government dates back to ancient civilizations like ancient Greece and Rome, but it gained prominence during the Enlightenment era. The works of philosophers such as John Locke and James Madison significantly influenced the development and formalizations of this concept. So the key elements of separations of powers are the legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch. So sa legislative branch, ito ay sangay na responsible sa paggawa ng batas. Ito ay kinakatawan ng mga tao at nagpapatupad ng kanilang kapangyarihan sa pamamagitan ng bicameral o unicameral na sistema, depende sa konstitusyon ng bansa. So halimbawa, sa isang bansa mayroon dalawang bahagi ng legislatura. Ito ay ang Senado at ang kapulungan ng mga kinatawan. Ang Senado ay may tungkulin na magbalangkas at mag-aproba ng mga batas, habang ang kapulungan ng mga kinatawan ay nagre-representa sa iba't ibang distrito ng bansa at nagpapasa rin ng mga batas. Ang pagkakaroon ng magkahiwalay na bahagi ng legislatura ay nagpapahintulot ng boses sa iba't ibang sektor ng lipunan na maging bahagi ng paglikha ng mga batas. Executive branch naman, Ito ay sangay na nagpapatupad ng mga batas na ipinasa lang sangay ng legislatura. Ito ay pinamumunuan ng Pangulo, Punong Ministro o katulad ng tagapamahala, kasama ang iba't ibang mga departamento at ahensya ng pamahalaan. Halimbawa, sa ilalim ng sangay na ehekutibo, ang Pangulo ay may kapangyarihang magpataw ng mga pulisiya at programa na naglalayong ipatupad ang mga batas at mapabuti ang kondisyon ng bansa. Halimbawa, kung ipinasa ng legislatura ang batas para sa libreng edukasyon, ang Pangulo ay magiging responsible sa paglikha ng mga hakbang upang maisakatuparan ito, tulad ng paglaan ng pondo para sa edukasyon at pagtatalaga ng mga opisyal na magsisigurado sa maayos na implementasyon nito. At ang judicial branch naman ay ang sangay na nagpapaliwanag sa mga batas na pinapangalagaan na ito ay naaayon sa konstitusyon o pangunahing legal na prinsipyo. Binubuo ito ng mga independeng hukuman at mga hukom na responsible sa paglutas sa mga alitan sa pagsusuri at pagiging konstitusyonal ng mga batas at aksyon ng mga ehekutibo. Halimbawa, sa isang kasong kinuha sa hukuman, ang mga hukom ay magiging bahagi ng pagdedesisyon kung ang isang batas o hakbang ng ehekutibo ay naaayon sa mga probisyon o konstitusyon. Kung ang isang batas ay natukoy na labag sa mga karapatan ng mga mamamayan batay sa konstitusyon, ang hudikatura ay may kapangyarihang maglabas ng pasyal na ibasura ay turing na hindi epektibo ang naturang batas. So, sa pamamagitan ng paghihiwalay ng kapangyarihan, nagkakaroon ng balanse sistema ng pamamahala kung saan bawat sangay ay may malinaw na tungkulin at responsibilidad upang mapanatili ang demokrasya at protektahan ang mga karapatan ng mga mamamayan.
Hello everyone, it's Jocell B. Rosales again from PSIT1, and today I'm going to discuss about the challenges and criticisms in separation of powers. While separation of powers is generally considered essential for democratic governance, it is not without challenges and criticisms. Some argue that it can lead to gridlock and slow decision-making, while others criticize the potential for power struggles and a lack of coordination among branches. The separation of powers and checks and balances in the Philippine government have faced several challenges and criticisms over the years. Some of these challenges have manifested in specific events and situations which highlight the vulnerabilities in the system. Here are some examples related to checks and balances in the Philippine context. Supreme Court impeachment in 2012. In 2012, the impeachment of Chief Justice Renato Colonna exposed issues with the checks and balances between the executive and judicial branches. The House of Representatives impeached Corona on charges of corruption and partiality. However, critics argued that the impeachment was politically motivated, driven by then-President Benigno Aquino III's desire to gain control over the Supreme Court. This raised concerns about the independence of the judiciary and the potential for executive interference. Next is the Duterte's war on drugs. President Rodrigo Duterte's controversial war on drugs policy, which began in 2016, faced criticisms for alleged extrajudicial killings and human rights abuses. Despite concerns raised by both local and international human rights groups, the executive branch continued to push its anti-drug campaign, seemingly unchecked by the legislative and judicial branches. This highlighted challenges in holding the executive accountable for its actions. Next is the Congress as a rubber stamp. At times, the Philippine Congress has been accused of being a rubber stamp for the President's agenda, particularly when the majority of lawmakers belong to the President's party or coalition. This lack of independence in the legislature can weaken the system of checks and balances and result in the executive branch having significant influence over the legislative agenda. Next is the congressional oversight. The ability of the Philippine Congress to effectively exercise oversight over the executive branch has been a subject of criticism. There have been instances when key government actions, such as the declaration of martial law or major infrastructure projects, were not subjected to thorough scrutiny and debate in the legislature. Next is the political dynasties and patronage. The prevalence of political dynasties in the Philippines can lead to loyalty to family interests over institutional responsibilities. This can hinder the ability of lawmakers to serve as effective checks on executive power, as they may be more inclined to align with the executive rather than exercise independent judgment. Next is the media suppression. The Philippine media landscape has faced challenges with concerns about press freedom and independent journalism. Instances of media suppression or intimidation can hinder the media's role as a watchdog and limit the dissemination of critical information related to government actions. Next is the fast-tracking legislation. There have been instances when important legislation, such as the passage of the controversial Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, was fast-tracked without sufficient public consultation and scrutiny. Critics argue that this process bypassed the usual checks and balances, potentially leading to the infringement of civil liberties. Addressing these challenges and criticisms requires a commitment to strengthening democratic institutions, promoting transparency, and enhancing the accountability of public officials. It also necessitates active participation from civil society, the media, and the public in holding the government accountable and safeguarding the principles of separation of powers and checks and balances.
Magandang araw po sa inyo lahat. Ito po ang aking report. Conclusion. The separation of power is a fundamental principle that underpin democratic governance, providing checks and balance to ensure the protection of individual rights and prevent the abuse of power, although not without change. Its successful implementation is various countries demonstrate its enduring relevance and importance in shaping stable and accountable government. As democratic system evolved, maintaining the balance between the branches of government remain crucial for the continuous successful of the separation of powers. Dito sa report kong ito, mababasa natin yung sa kapangyarihan. Dapat balance sila yung kapangyarihan para walang naaabuso. Kasi, kung papasobra yung paggamit sa kapangyarihan, pwedeng may maabusong tao. Or, hindi maging maganda yung pamamalakad or magiging masama. Ganun. Dito sa atin ang kapangyarihan. May mga kapangyarihan din sa government natin. Hindi lang presidente. Diba, yung legislative. Ito yung tagagawa ng batas. Yung executive, ito yung tagapasa ng batas. Kung approve or hindi. Yung president naman, ito yung may control sa military, may control din sa kagawaran, may control din siyang pumili ng mga kalimi sa kabinete, pwede rin siyang yung sentensya mo, pwede niya mapababa. Ganun. Di ba napansin nyo na yung kapangyarihan? Kasi pag napasobra na yung isa diyan, pwedeng kontrolin ng isang may kapangyarihan na mas mataas pa. Kaya sobrang napakahalaga ng balansing kapangyarihan. Kasi Kung hindi yan mababalanse or walang magkocontrol yan, pwede itong mapasama. Mapasama sa mga mamamayan mo, sa mga nakapaligid sa'yo, sa bansa mo. Kaya napakahalagang dapat tama lang ang pamamalakad. Control, hindi naman sa control, yung kumbaga, pag alam nilang mali, yung ginagawa mo, pwede nilang questionin. Kaya napakahalaga talaga ng balanse lang ang kapangyarihan. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat.
Have a pleasant day to everyone. At this video, I'm going to discuss what is legislative on the executive is all about, and of course, its importance. This lesson have 7 rather, and I will be discussing the 1 to 4 of it. So no more chicas, let's dive into the lesson. Quick introduction. Legislative checks on the executive branch are an essential component of a system of government with separation of powers. The concept is rooted in the idea of balancing powers and preventing any one branch from becoming too dominant. In a typical democratic system, the executive branch is responsible for implementing and enforcing laws, while the legislative branch is responsible for making laws. Impeachment plays a crucial role as a legislative check on the executive branch. It provides a mechanism for holding executive officials, including the president, accountable for serious misconduct or high crimes and misdemeanors. Through the impeachment process, the legislative branch can investigate and bring charges against executive officials, ensuring that they are held responsible for any wrongdoing or abuse of power. Impeachment serves to prevent executive overreach and abuse, reinforce the system of checks and balance, and upholds the principle of democratic governance. It demonstrates the accountability and responsibility of government officials and strengthens the stability of the democratic system. Impeachment serves as a safety net to prevent executive overreach and misuse of authority. It ensures that government officials are not above the law and can be removed from their position if they violated their duties or engaged in unlawful activities. When it comes to implementation, legislative oversight is crucial. Legislative check on the executive branch in the democratic system. It involves monitoring and reviewing the action of the executive to ensure accountability, transparency, and adherence to the law. Through oversight, the legislative branch holds the executive accountable for its decisions, prevents abuse of powers, and evaluates the effectiveness of policies and programs. It also exercises control over budgetary matters and regulation actions. Legislative oversight reinforces the system of check and balance, prevent undue concentration of power, and upholds democratic principles. By exercising this oversight, the legislative branch serves as protector of people, interests, and ensures that the government operates within the confines of the Constitution and in the best interest of the nation. Last topic that we'll be discussing for today's video is the power of the purse. Power of the purse is a significant legislative check on the executive branch in democratic system. It's mainly because it grants the legislative body exclusive control over government spending and budget allocation. The importance of this power is legislative check on the executive lies in its ability to shape the executive policies and priorities. By controlling the budget, the legislature holds the executive accountable and exercises oversight over how public funds are used. The power of the purse also serves as check on executive action, as the legislature can withhold or allocate funds based on its approval or of certain initiatives. It fosters cooperation between the branches, ensures a balance of power, and represents the interests of the public in determining how public funds are utilized. Overall, the power of the purse reinforces a system of check and balance, upholds democratic principle, and safeguards the responsible use of public resources.
Judicial review, a vital legislative check on the executive branch in democratic systems. It grants the judiciary the authority to review the constitutionality of laws and executive actions. If a law or action is found to be inconsistent with the Constitution, the courts can declare it unconstitutional and nullify its effects. Through judicial review, the judiciary acts as a safeguard against executive overreach, ensuring that the executive adheres to the Constitution and the rule of law. This process also protects individual rights and liberties from potential abuses by the executive, by providing an independent mechanism to challenge the maintaining a proper balance of power among the three branches of government. So, as far as we know, the legislative branch is authorized to make laws, alter and repeal through the power vested in the Congress. But judicial can declare those laws unconstitutional. Emergency powers and the War Powers Act, a vital legislative check on the executive branch in democratic systems. It grants the judiciary the authority to review the constitutionality of laws and executive actions. If a law or action is found to be inconsistent with the Constitution, the courts can declare it unconstitutional and nullify its effects. Through judicial review, the judiciary acts as a safeguard against executive overreach, ensuring that the executive adheres to the Constitution and the rule of law. This process protects individual rights and liberties from potential abuses by the executive. By providing an independent mechanism to challenge the legality of executive actions, judicial review reinforces the system of checks and balances, maintaining a proper balances of power among the three branches of government. The Constitution expressly grants the Supreme Court the power of judicial review, as the power to declare a treaty, international or executive agreement, law, presidential decree, proclamation, order, instruction, ordinance, or regulation unconstitutional. When the issue of unconstitutionality of a legislative act is raised, it is the established doctrine that the court may exercise its power of judicial review only if the following requisites are present, like an actual and appropriate case and a controversy exists, and the personal and substantial interest of the party, and more. Judicial review is defined as the process by which courts examine the actions of the three wings of the government, which are legislative, executive, and administrative wings. It also determines whether such actions are consistent with the Constitution of the country. The judiciary of the Philippines consists of the Supreme Court, which is established in the Constitution, and three levels of lower courts, which are established through law by the Congress of the Philippines.
You might think that the executive branch is more powerful than the legislative branch, or the legislative branch is more powerful than the executive branch. But there's something that keeps those two in balance. I am John Carlos G. Sebuco. I will discuss the executive checks on the legislature, and we will answer those questions on this topic. First, let's have the outline. Executive checks on the legislature have two topics: the veto power and executive orders. I will discuss the veto power, and Angelo Buan will discuss the executive orders. First, let's start into the introduction. The democratic system of the Philippines, checks and balance prevent excessive power concentration in any branch of government. While the legislative branch plays a crucial role in crafting laws, the executive branch also possesses specific checks on the legislature to ensure that the legislation aligns with the overall governance of the country. Sa sistema ng demokrasya ng Pilipinas, may mga mekanismo na tinatawag na checks and balance na naglalayong maiwasan pagkakaroon ng labis na kapangyarihan sa anumang sangay ng pamahalaan. Ang mga checks and balance na ito ay nagbibigay daan sa mga iba't ibang sangay ng pamahalaan na magkaroon ng kontrol na bigyang bantay ang bawat isa upang matiyak na walang isa sa mga sangay ang mga pangyarihan at maaring abusuin ang kanilang kapangyarihan. Isa sa mga sangay ng pamahalaan sa Pilipinas ay ang ehekutibo na kumakatawan sa Pangulo at ang kanyang gabinete. Ang legislatibo naman ay kinabibilangan ng mga mambabatas, nagdadala at nagpapatupad ng mga batas. Ang mga ito ay nagkakaroon ng mga responsibilidad at kapangyarihan na magbalangkas at ipatupad ang mga batas sa Pilipinas. Ang checks and balance na sistema ay nagbibigay ng daan sa ehekutibo na suriin at bantayan ang mga hakbang ng legislatibo upang masiguro na ang mga batas na ito ay naaayon sa interes ng bayan at sumusunod sa ligang batas. Sa ganitong paraan, ang pagkakaroon ng iba't ibang sangay ng pamahalaan na nagbabantay sa isa't isa ay nagtutulak ng mas matapat, patas at epektibong pamamahala sa bansa. Next naman ay ang veto power. According to the 1987 Constitution, Article 4, the Legislative Department, Section 27, meron itong veto power ang Pangulo. Veto power in the Philippines allows the President to reject legislation approved by the legislature. Veto occurs when the President declines to sign a bill into law, sending back to the legislature. Sa sistema ng pamahalaan ng Pilipinas, ang Pangulo ay mayroong tinatawag na veto power. Ibig sabihin nito, may kapangyarihan ng Pangulo na tanggihan o hindi aprubahan ang mga batas na pinasa ng legislatura. Kapag mayroong isang panukalang batas na inaprubahan ng mga mamabatas, ngunit ayaw itong pirmahan ng Pangulo, nagaganap ang tinatawag na veto. Kapag nangyari ang veto, hindi magiging batas ang panukalang batas na iyon. Pinabalik ng Pangulo ang panukalang batas sa legislatura. May maaaring gawin na hakbang para may saayon ito. Maaaring pag-aralan ulit ito ng mga mambabatas or baguhin ito o ipasa muli sa kabila ng pagtutol ng Pangulo. Ang prosesong ito ay bahagi ng checks and balance na sistema ng pamahalaan upang masiguro na ang bawat sangay ay mayroong tamang pagbabantay sa kapangyarihan ng bawat isa at maiwasan ng labis na kapangyarihan ng anumang sangay ng pamahalaan. Next naman ay significance of veto power. Ano nga ba ang importansya ng veto power? Una ay ang preservation of checks and balance. Veto power maintains the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. Ang checks and balance o mekanismo ng bawat sangay ng pamahalaan ay mahalaga upang maiwasan ang labis na pagkakaroon ng kapangyarihan ng isang sangay. Sa pamamagitan ng veto power, ang Pangulo ay may kakayahang tanggihan ang mga batas na ipinasa ng legislatura. Ito ay nagpapanatili ng balanseng kapangyarihan sa pagitan ng ehekutibo at legislatura upang hindi magkaroon ng pang-abuso o labis na kapangyarihan ang isa sa kanila. It prevents the legislature from wielding unchecked authority and ensures that laws undergo through examination. Dito kailangan magkaroon ng masusing pag-examine or pagtingin sa mga batas na pinapasa ng legislatura bago ito pirmahan ng Pangulo. Ang kasunod naman na importansya ng veto power ay ensuring well-considered legislation. The President's veto allows a thorough review of proposed laws, identifying potential flaws. Pagkakaroon ng veto power ay nagbibigay daan sa Pangulo na masusing pag-aralan ang inihain na batas bago ito pirmahan o tanggihan, gaya nga ng sinabi ko noong una. Sa prosesong ito, maaring masilip ng Pangulo ang mga posibleng kahinaan o pagkakamali ng batas at maaring hilingin sa legislatura na amyendahan o ayusin ang mga ito upang mas mapabuti ang provision na nakapaloob sa batas. Ang next naman ay ang safeguarding executive priorities. Veto power protects the interests and policy objectives of the executive branch. Ang veto power ay nagbibigay ng proteksyon sa mga interes at layunin ng ehekutibong sangay, kung saan kinabibilangan ng Pangulo at ang kanyang mga gabinete. Kapag may mga batas na maaaring magkontra o makasalungat sa mga pulisya o programa ng ehekutibo, maaaring gamitin ng Pangulo ang kanyang veto upang panatilihin ang konsistensya at pagkikitugma ng mga batas sa mga layunin ng ehekutibong sangay. Sa pamamagitan nito, mas nagiging epektibo at mas organisado ang pagpapatupad ng mga programa ng pamahalaan. Next naman ay meron tayong two types of veto power. The regular veto and the pocket veto. First is the regular veto. The President rejects the entire bill, requiring the two-thirds majority in both chambers to override. Sa regular na veto, tinatanggihan ng Pangulo ang buong panukalang batas na ipinasa ng Kongreso. Kapag nangyayari ito, kinakailangan ng two-thirds o karamihan sa parehong kapulungan ng Kongreso na bumoto para ma-override o hindi tanggapin ang veto ng Pangulo. Sa prosesong ito, ang prosesong ito ay mahalaga upang masiguro na hindi basta-basta ma-overrule ang desisyon ng Pangulo sa pagtanggi sa isang panukalang batas. Ginagamit din ito upang masuring mabuti ang mga batas na ipinasa ng legislatura kung may mali bago ito pirmahan. And one of the example nito ay, alam nyo ba that Bongbong Marcos vetoes Bulacan Airport Ecozone Bill? Ito ay isa sa mga example ng paggamit ng isang presidente sa kanyang power to veto a bill. Nakita niya na marami ang putas yung bill. Una, sa mga dahilan nito ay nakita niya na magkakos yung project na mas mahal kaysa magiging benefits or incentive ng project sa mismong mga beneficiaries. And alam naman natin na walang masyadong resources ang Pilipinas to create large projects. It will have an additional burden on taxpayers in order to create that project. In simpler terms, ang magiging kuhaan ng budget ay either sa pagtaas ng tax sa mga business or sa mga tao or mangungutang para may sakatuparan yung bill. Kaya niya ito vinito kasi magkakos yung project ng malaking halaga and hindi kaya ng Pilipinas. Second reason naman ay yung place na gustong pagtayuan ng Special Economic Zone ay malapit sa Clark Special Economic Zone, which is unnecessary at against isang government policy na pumapatungkol sa mga location ng mga economic zone sa isang bansa. Ang third reason ay kailangan sa isang project ng audit provision kasi may kailangan silang sundin na proseso na tinatawag na audit provision, which is kailangan magbigay ng procedures para sa kakailangan ng lupa para sa project na yun at mismong detalyado master plan para sa economic zone. In conclusion, vinito ng Pangulo ang Bulacan Airport Ecozone Bill dahil may mga butas ito at need pa itong ayusin. Next na type ng veto power ay ang pocket veto. If the President neither signs nor rejects a bill within 30 days while the Congress adjourns, the bill is pocket vetoed. Ang pocket veto ay nangyayari kapag hindi pumirma o tinanggihan ng Pangulo ang isang panukalang batas sa loob ng 30 araw mula nung ipinasa to ng Kongreso. Ang kalagahan ng 30 araw na limitasyon ay dahil kailangan ng Kongreso na maging aktibo o bukas ang sesyon na ito upang magawa ang mga anumang hakbang ukol sa batas. Kung sa loob ng nasabing panahon ay nag-adjourn ang Kongreso nang hindi napipirmahan ng Pangulo o tinanggihan ng Pangulo ang panukalang batas na kanilang pinasa, ito ay matituring na pocket veto. Sa ganitong paraan, hindi na mabibigyan ng pagkakataon ng Kongreso na ma-override ang veto at hindi na magiging batas ang nasabing panukala. Kaya kailangan ng Kongreso na maging aktibo sa pagpapasa ng panukala para ito ay may sakatuparan. Next naman ay ang criticism of veto power. We have two criticism, the political gridlock and excessive presidential authority. First is the political gridlock. Veto power may lead to delays in crucial legislation during strained executive-legislative relations. Ang veto power ay maaaring magdulot ng pagkaantala sa mahalagang batas sa panahon ng nagtutulungan ng ehekutibo at legislatura. Kapag may mga tensyon o hindi pagkakaunawaan sa pagitan ng dalawang sangay ng pamahalaan, maaaring magkaroon ng tinatawag na political gridlock o pagkakabara sa pag-aproba ng batas. Ang Pangulo ay maaaring tanggihan ang mga panukalang batas na ipasa ng legislatura na magiging resulta ng pagkatagal ng implementasyon ng mga batas na mahalaga para sa bansa. Ang next reason or criticism ay excessive presidential authority. Some argue that veto power grants too much authority to the president, potentially undermining representation. Ang veto power ay maaaring magbigay ng labis na kapangyarihan sa Pangulo na maaaring makaapekto sa representasyon ng mamamayan. Ibig sabihin nito, ang Pangulo ay may kakayang tanggihan ang mga batas na inaprubahan ng legislatura kahit na maaari ito ay kailanganin ng ating bayan. Sa ganitong paraan, maaaring maapektuhan ang boses ng isang sektor ng lipunan at maaaring maging dominante ang desisyon ng Pangulo sa pagbuo ng mga pulisya at batas. Kaya maaaring maging kailangan natin ay tama tayo sa pagpili na ating presidente dahil yung veto power ay isa sa mga malalakas na kapangyarihan ng Pangulo. Kaya kapag tama yung presidente natin, mas magiging maganda yung takbo ng batas at may sakatuparan yung mga tamang batas na dapat pinapatupad. Kasi kapag mali yung presidente inihalal natin, maaari niyang tanggihan or yung mga batas na gusto lamang niya ang may sakatuparan, hindi yung mga batas na kailangan ng ating bayan. And next ay ang conclusion. Veto power is a crucial executive check in the Philippines, ensuring balance and well-considered laws. Responsible exercise of power by both branches is essential for the smooth functioning of the democratic system. Sa pagtatapos, ang veto power ay isang critical na hakbang upang tiyakin ang pagkakaroon ng balanseng kapangyarihan sa pagitan ng ehekutibo at legislatura sa Pilipinas. Ito ay nagpapahintulot sa Pangulo na ma-review ng mabuti ang mga batas na ipinasa ng Kongreso at tiyaking ang mga ito ay naayon sa interes at pangailangan ng buong bansa. Sa kabilang banda naman, mahalaga rin na maging responsable na gamitin ang kapangyarihan mula sa parehong sangay ng pamahalaan upang maiwasan ang hidwaan at pagkakaparila sa proseso ng paggawa ng mga batas. Sa ganitong paraan, magiging maayos mabisa ang pagtakbo ng sistema demokratiko sa Pilipinas, kung saan ang boses at representasyon ng mamamayan ay masusunod at mapapanatili. And ito lamang ang tungkol sa executive checks on the legislature. And patungkol ito sa veto power. And I am Giancarlo D. Sebuco and I will end my report here. And ang next report naman ay tungkol sa executive orders na i-discuss ni Mr. Mark Angelo Buan. That's all. Thank you.
Executive orders. Executive orders are directives issued by the President of the United States to the executive branch of the federal government. These orders have the force of law and are used to implement and enforce law, manage the international operation of the government, and guide federal agencies in their execution of policies. They are a powerful tool for the President to influence and shape the administrative policies of the executive branch without going through the formal legislative. While executive orders can be an efficient means for the President to take action, they are not explicitly mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. Instead, they are based on the President's constitutional authority to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Article 2, Section 3. However, the scope and limits of executive orders have been the subject of much debate and legal scrutiny throughout history. It is important to note that the executive orders are not meant to replace or supersede the role of Congress in creating laws. They should be consistent with existing laws passed by the Congress and cannot be used to create new laws or appropriate funds that have not been allocated by Congress.
Good day, sir. I am Cristine T and I will be discussing judicial checks on the executive and legislature. So, ano nga ba ang judicial checks on the executive and legislature? The idea of checks and balances ensures that no branch of government grows overly dominant in a democratic system of governance. The judiciary is essential in maintaining the rule of law and defending individual rights by acting as a check on the executive and legislative branches. For example, the court can evaluate and reject actions taken by the executive branch or the legislature that are thought to be illegal or to violate citizens' rights. With this authority, the judiciary can serve as a check on potential power grabs by the other branches, ensuring a just and equitable form of government. The judiciary contributes to the preservation of the democratic process and the separation of powers by acting as this crucial check. So, ang judicial checks ay mga hakbang na ginagawa ng hudikatura, korte o hukuman upang balansehin at bantayan ng mga kilos ng executive, ehekutibo at legislature. Ito ay nagpapahintulot sa hudikatura na suriin at pasukin ang mga gawain ng ehekutibo at legislatura upang matiyak na sumusunod sila sa batas at konstitusyon. Sa pamamagitan ng mga ito, na isa sa alang-alang ng hudikatura ang mga karapatan at pananagutan ng mga mamamayan na nagtitiyak ng patas at demokratikong sistema ng pamamahala. Sunod naman ay ang judicial review. The Philippine Supreme Court in particular has the authority to review and assess the constitutionality of laws, executive orders, and governmental decisions. This process is known as judicial review. With this power, the courts can make sure that these activities adhere to the rules and values outlined in the Philippine Constitution. Example, in the 2018 case, Republic 5 Sereno, the Supreme Court used judicial review to void Maria Lourdes Sereno's appointment as the Chief Justice of the Philippines. The court declared the appointment to be unlawful since it lacked some prerequisites and necessary paperwork, creating an important precedent for the selection of senior judge. So, ito ay ang proseso kung saan ang mga korte o hukuman ay sinusuri at tinutukoy kung ang mga batas, mga aksyon ng ehekutibo o mga hakbang ng legislatura ay naaayon sa konstitusyon sa pamamagitan ng judicial review. Ang hudikatura ay nagiging mahalagang bahagi sa pagiging balanseng sangay ng pamahalaan at nagtitiyak na sumusunod ang ibang sangay sa mga alituntunin ng batas na nakasaad sa konstitusyon. The Philippine Supreme Court used judicial review in Republic v. Serrano 2018 to overturn the nomination of Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. The court reached its conclusion after concluding that certain constitutional conditions, including the submissions of statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALNs, were not met during the appointment process. This decision established a significant precedent by highlighting the importance of abiding by constitutional requirements when appointing senior judges. It emphasized the court's duty to defend the Constitution and its dedication to maintaining openness and accountability in government. The Supreme Court reiterated the idea that all government actions must comply with the provisions of the Constitution in order to preserve the integrity of the court by disqualifying the appointment. So, sinasabi dito na in Republic v. Sereno 2018, ginamit ng Korte Suprema ng Pilipinas ang judicial review upang bawiin ang nominasyon ni Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. Ang Korte ay nagtapos na hindi nasunod ang ilang kondisyong nakasaad sa Constitution, kabilang na ang pagpasa ng mga statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth or SALNs. Sa proseso ng pagtatalaga, ang desisyong ito ay nagtakda ng isang mahalagang jurisprudence sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay diin sa kahalagahan ng pagsunod sa mga konstitusyonal na kondisyon sa pagtatalaga ng mga mataas na hukom.
Hello, I'm Learjay L Encina and I'll be tackling the checks on excessive executive actions. Checks on excessive executive actions, another crucial function of the judiciary is to check the executive branch exercise of power. The executive branch typically led by the president or prime minister. They are responsible for implementing and enforcing laws. While it plays a vital role in governing the country, there is a risk of potential abuse of power or overreach. Through the mechanism of judicial checks, the judiciary can intervene if the executive branch takes actions that exceed its constitutional authority or violate the rights of citizens. This could include executive orders or directives that infringe upon fundamental freedoms or constitutional rights. By striking down such actions, the judiciary ensures that the executive operates within its prescribed limits and respect the boundaries set by the Constitution. So, ang executive branch ay kadalasang pinamumunuan ng Pangulo o punong ministro at sila ay responsible sa pagpapatupad ng mga batas. Tas, alam naman natin na ito ay mahalagang papel sa mamahala sa bansa. May panganib itong dala na posibleng abusuhin nila ang kanilang kapangyarihan o lumabag sila sa mga batas. Sa pamamagitan ng mekanismo ng judicial checks, maaaring makialam ang judiciary o hukuman kung ang executive branch ay gumagawa ng mga aksyon na lumalampas sa constitutional na otoridad nito o lumalabag sila sa mga karapatan ng mga mamamayan. Kasama dito ang mga executive order na nag-uurong sa mga pangunahing kalayaan o mga constitutional na karapatan. Sa pagbasura ng mga ganitong aksyon, tiniyak ng judiciary o hukuman na ang executives ay kumikilos sa loob ng itinakdang limitasyon at nire-respeto ang mga hangganan na itinakda ng Constitution. Sa gayon, pinoprotektahan ng judiciary ang karapatan ng mga mamamayan at pinananatili nito ang integridad ng ating sistemang demokratiko. So sa madaling salita, ang judiciary o hukuman ay may mahalagang tungkulin na bantayan ng mga labis na aksyon ng executive branch upang masiguro na ito ay sumusunod sa mga limitasyon na itinakda ng Constitution. Sa pamamagitan ng pagbasura ng mga aksyon, pinoprotektahan ng judiciary ang mga karapatan at kalayaan ng mga mamamayan at pinapanatili nito ang balanse ng ating gobyerno.
Hello, I'm Abe Loran E. Pelandiana. I'm here to discuss my topic, presentation about ensuring legislative compliance. What is the definition of ensuring legislative compliance? Ensuring legislative compliance refers to the process of adhering to the following laws, regulations, and rules that are applicable to a particular organization, businesses or individual. It involves taking proactive measures to meet the legal requirements set forth by government bodies, industry, regulators, or other relevant authorities. So, ensuring legislative compliance with the Constitution is a fundamental aspect of maintaining the rule of law and upholding the principles of a democratic society. The judiciary plays a vital role in this process, acting as a check on the legislative branch to ensure that its laws and action align with the Constitution, which serves as the supreme law of the land. Judicial review. This means that the courts have the power to review the constitutionality of laws passed by the legislative branch. When a legal dispute arises and law's constitutionality is challenged, the courts have the responsibility to examine the law in question and determine whether it complies with the provision and principles set forth in the Constitution. Interpretation of the Constitution. When legal questions arise about the scope or meaning of constitutional provision, the judiciary has the responsibility to interpret the Constitution and provide clarity on how it applies to particular situation. This ensures that the laws made by the legislative adhere to the intended spirit and purpose of the Constitution. Declaration of unconstitutionality. This process effectively invalidates the law, preventing its enforcement and application. This declaration establishes a precedent for future cases and serves as a powerful deterrent to the legislative branch from passing unconstitutional laws. Preserving fundamental rights. Constitutions often include provisions that safeguard individual rights and liberties. The judiciary plays a crucial role in protecting these fundamental rights from being infringed upon the laws passed by the legislature. If a law is found to violate constitutionally protected rights, the courts will strike it down to ensure that the fundamental liberties are not compromised. Check and balances. By exercising its power of judicial review, the judiciary provides a critical check on the legislative branch authority. This system of checks and balances ensures that no branch of government becomes too powerful or deviates from the constitutional framework that underpins the country's governance. Ensuring legislative compliance. The legislative branch is responsible for making laws that govern the country and its citizens. However, these laws must not contradict or violate the Constitution, which serves as the supreme law of the land. The judiciary plays a pivotal role in ensuring legislative compliance with the Constitution. When a law or part of a law is challenged before the courts, the judiciary carefully examines its provision, compares them with the Constitution's guiding principles. If the court finds that a law is unconstitutional, it can declare it null and void, effectively removing it from a legal framework. This process ensures that the laws enacted by the legislature do not infringe upon citizens' rights and are in harmony with the Constitution's overarching values. conclusion, the judiciary's role in providing checks on the executive and legislative branches is vital for the proper functioning of a democratic system. Through the powers of judicial review, checks on executive actions, and ensuring legislative compliance, the judiciary acts as a against the abuse of power and erosion of fundamentals. This separation of powers and system of checks and balances exemplify the principles upon which democratic governance is built, assuring citizens that no branch of government is above the law, and that their rights and liberties are protected. As society's needs and values evolve, the judiciary role remains an indispensable pillar of stability and justice, upholding the law for generations to come.
Good day, everyone. Today I will be presenting an essential aspect of our democratic system, legislative check on the judiciary, and confirmation of judicial appointments. I am Riza May Rosento, and I am welcome you all to this presentation. Let's begin with an overview of our presentation. In a democratic society, the concept of the separation of power is vital. It involves the three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Today, we will focus on the legislative branch and how it exercises check on the judiciary. Additionally, we will delve into the process of confirming judicial appointments. The separation of powers is a fundamental principle that ensures no single branch holds excessive power. The executive branch enforces laws, the legislative branch creates law, and the judiciary interprets law to ensure they align with our Constitution. The judiciary plays a critical role in safeguarding the rule of law and the Constitution. Its primary function include interpreting law, resolving legal disputes, and conducting judicial review to ensure law and government action comply with the Constitution. Now, let's tackle how the legislative branch check the judiciary. One essential power is the process of impeachment. This process allows the legislative branch to remove judges from office for misconduct or abuse of power. There are several advantages to legislative check on the judiciary. Firstly, it ensures accountability and ethical conduct among judges. By holding judges accountable, we can prevent any potential misuse of power and reinforce public trust in the judiciary. However, legislative check also have potential drawbacks. The process of impeachment can become politically motivated, leading to delays in judicial proceeding. Furthermore, it might raise concern about the independence and the impartiality of the judiciary. Moving on, let's discuss the process of confirming judicial appointment. When a judicial vacancy arises, the President nominates candidates for federal judicial position. The Senate, as part of the legislative branch, plays a crucial role in confirming or rejecting these appointments. The Senate's confirmation process involved thorough evaluation of nominated candidates. The Senate Judiciary Committee play a pivotal role in examining candidates' qualification, experience, and ideologies. The confirmation process has several advantages. It ensures well-qualified and competent individuals assigned to the bench. By involving the Senates, it provides an additional layer of scrutiny to prevent unqualified or politically biased appointments. However, the confirmation process also has its challenges. It can be susceptible to partisan politics, leading to contentious nomination battles. Additionally, delay in the confirmation process might result in judicial vacancies and impact the functioning of the judiciary. To conclude, legislative check on the judiciary and the confirmation of judicial appointments are essential elements of our democratic system, while they aim to maintain accountability and competence. They also face challenges that require careful consideration. Striking the right balance is essential for a fair and independent legal system.
Welcome to my video presentation on legislative checks on judiciary, ensuring accountability and balance of power. In a democratic system, the separation of powers is vital to prevent any one branch of government from becoming too powerful. Today, we will explore how the legislative branch exercises check on the judiciary to maintain accountability, uphold the rule of law, and ensure justice. Let's dive in. In a democracy, the legislative branch plays a crucial role in overseeing the judiciary. These legislative checks are essential to maintain a balance of power and prevent potential abuses. Let's explore the different types of legislative checks. The legislative branches exercise various checks on the judiciary to ensure accountability. These include confirmation and appointment. The legislature confirms judicial nomination and ensures suitability candidates are appointed. Number 2, impeachment. The constitutional process to remove high-ranking officials, including judge, for grave misconduct. Number 3, budgetary control. The legislature controls the judiciary's budget, influencing its operation. Number 4, jurisdiction and court structure. The legislature establishes court and defines their areas of authority. Statutory interpretation. Legislature can amend laws in response to court decision they disagree with. Number 6. Constitutional amendments. The legislature may propose amendments to address court decision or modify the Constitution. Number 7. Oversight and investigation. Conducting hearings and investigation to ensure transparency and accountability. And lastly, judicial review of legislation. Not a legislative checks, but the judiciary power to review law's constitutionality. Let's look at a notable example of a legislative checks on the judiciary in the Philippines. In 2012, Chief Justice Renato Corona faced impeachment proceedings. He was accused of corruption, dishonest, and failing to disclose his asset as required by law. The impeachment trial became highly contentious, raising concerns about political motivations and its potential impact on judicial independence. Balancing legislative checks and judicial independence is critical. While checks are essential for accountability, they must not compromise the judiciary's impartiality or subject judges to political pressures. Striking this balance ensures independent, fair judicial system. The role of legislative branch. The legislative branch plays a dual role in the process. On one hand, it upholds the Constitution and ensures judges act within their authority. On the other hand, it exercises checks to hold judges accountable for misconduct or breaches of public trust. Next is constitutional safeguards. Constitutional safeguards protect judicial independence. In the Philippines, the Constitution includes provision to safeguard the judiciary's independence, ensuring judges can make impartial decisions without fear of retributions. Public perception and confidence. A fair and transparent process is crucial for public perceptions and confidence in judiciary. A well-conducted impeachment trial or legislative oversight builds trust in the judicial and legislative system, reinforcing the citizens' faith in the rule of law. To ensure a balanced approach, certain recommendations can be considered. Clarity in impeachment process. Clarity defines guidelines and due process impeachment proceedings to avoid political motivation. Number two, impartial investigations. Ensure investigations are unbiased to maintain integrity of the process. Number three, public awareness. Increase public awareness about legislative checks on judiciary and their significance. Thank you for joining in this exploration of legislative checks on judiciary. I hope this presentation has provided valuable insight into the significance of maintaining a harmonious relationship between the legislative and judicial branches to protect the democratic principles upon which our society thrives. Thank you for watching and have a great day.
Good day, everyone. I am Blessie B. Bañaria, and I will talk about how the legislative check on budgetary control. Okay, so here is some importance of budgetary control and transparency on governance. First is to prevent corruption, syempre. When all the when the allocation and utilization of funds are open to public inspection, um, it becomes more challenging for officials to engage in corrupt practices, such as embezzlement or misappropriation of funds. Second is accountability. When the government's budgetary decisions are transparent and subject to scrutiny, it becomes easier to hold public officials accountable for their actions and expenditures. Third is the mas effective yung resource allocation, syempre. With a clear understanding of available resources and the needs of the country, governments can prioritize and fund essential services, infrastructure projects, and social welfare initiatives effectively. Number four is the public participation and engagement. When citizens have access to information about how their tax money is spent, they can provide feedback, voice concerns, and contribute to the decision making process. Okay, the fifth one is the economic stability and investor confidence. A government, yeah, a transparent and well managed budgetary process enhances economic stability and attracts foreign and domestic investors. Last one is the credibility and trust. A government that maintains budgetary control and transparency earns credibility and trust from its citizens and international partners. Diyan na papasok yung tinatawag natin power of the purse. So, who has the power of the purse? Let's find out. The Philippine Congress. The Philippine Congress is composed of the Senate and the House Representative, which are both part of the legislative branch of the government in the Philippines. So, what does the power of the purse means? It means that Congress has the authority to approve, modify, and reject the national budget proposed by the executive branch, specifically the Department of Budget and Management, which is called the DBM. The budget bills goes through several readings and deliberations in both houses of the Congress before it becomes a law. Diyan na din papasok yung General Appropriations Acts or GAA. Ano nga ba yun? Ito ang official budget document na inapprove na ng Congress. Naka-authorize dito yung allocation of public funds for government programs, projects, and operations. Meron na din tayong oversight committees. Congress establishes various oversight committee responsible for scrutinizing the implementation of the budget and the performance of government agencies. For example, the House Committee on Appropriations and the Senate Committee on Finance play significant roles in examining the use of public funds and ensuring that they are spent in accordance with the GAA. So, paano napoprocess yung budget hearing in Congress? Congress conducts budget hearings where government agencies present their proposed budget and justify their funding requests. During these hearings, lawmakers can question agency officials and make adjustments to the budget based on their assessment of the agency's need and performance. Budget transparency and accountability. The Philippines promote transparency in the budgetary process through the publication of budget documents and reports. Citizens can access information on how public funds are allocated and used. Additionally, the Commission on Audit (COA) is an independent constitutional body tasked with auditing government expenditures to ensure accountability and legality. Kasi importante yan. Meron din tayong mga automatic appropriation kung saan hindi na kailangan ng hearing. Some portions of the budget are automatically appropriated and do not require annual congressional approval. Ang kasali dito ang debt service payments, certain pensions and benefits, at saka internal revenue allotments for local government units. However, these automatic appropriations are usually stipulated in the GAA and are subject to certain limitations and conditions. Example dito ang 2019 national issue kung saan related ang legislative checks sa budgetary control. Ayan. One example is the 2019 national budget issue, which garnered significant attention and scrutiny from the public, the media, and lawmakers. The case involved allegations of pork barrel or insertions in the budget, referring to unauthorized funds allegedly added by lawmakers to the General Appropriations Act without proper disclosure or scrutiny. In this case, the Senate and the House of Representatives passed different versions of the national budget for 2019, and the budget bill went through a bicameral conference committee to reconcile the difference between the two versions. During this process, there were accusations that some lawmakers had inserted discretionary funds for project in their respective constituencies without proper oversight and transparency. As a response to the controversy, the president at the time, Mr. Rodrigo Duterte, vetoed specific items in the 2019 budget amounting to billions of pesos, which he deemed to be unconstitutional or not in line with the administration's development priorities. This incident highlighted the importance of legislative checks on budgetary control in the Philippines. It showcased how the executive and legislative branches engaged in a series of negotiations and checks and balances to ensure that public funds are allocated properly, transparently, and in accordance with the law. That is all. Thank you.